Welcome to the Supply Chain Pioneers podcast, where we highlight industry leaders on the forefront of innovation and technology in planning, procurement, and logistics. Hosted by your supply chain pro to know, Ulf Venne.
Supply Chain Pioneers is powered by Everstream Analytics. Everstream gives you the predictive insights and analytics to make your supply chain faster, smarter, safer, and leaner. Go to everstream.ai to book your demo today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Supply Chain Pioneers. And with me, I have Shehrina Kamal, who's a Vice President of Product Management at Everstream Analytics. Welcome, Shehrina.
Hi, Ulf. Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. I work with Shehrina now for more than 11, 12 years by now. So this is going to be, for me, a very special episode because Shehrina is not only a co-worker, but also a close friend. And with that, I would love if we can start with maybe a short introduction from your side over your journey in supply chain management and whatever else you want to share.
Awesome. Thanks very much. So as you said, we have known each other for a very long time, but let me elaborate a little for the audience here of my background. So I'm originally from Bangladesh. I went to elementary school in Houston, Texas. I finished my middle school, high school, and bachelor's in Bangladesh, and then ended up in Germany, where I now live with my husband in the fun city of Cologne. And my journey in supply chain has been a long and winded one. So I finished my Bachelor's of Science in Economics at North-South University and landed an internship opportunity at the DHL Global Headquarters in Bonn through ISAG, which is a student organization, and it was an organization that I was active in during my time at North-South University. I had not considered supply chain as a path for me. I have to be very honest. It was a bit of a coincidence, but working at the global headquarters of DHL sounded pretty cool, so I said, why not? And my internship was at DHL Express and Global Sales, where I was responsible for requirements management and the rollout and adoption of an internal sales platform. And this was my first foray into product management, though I didn't really realize it at the time. And towards the end of my internship, I started looking for full-time employment, and this was 2010. And the macroeconomic conditions were not great, but I still managed to find a full-time role. I was hired into the corporate comms team at Deutsche Post DHL, where I supported various comms initiatives and also made some lifelong friends. From there, I made my way into the innovation department of DHL, managing the external partner network. And through the course of this role, I was tapped to support the partnership activities of a new innovation project within DHL to address supply chain resiliency. I took on a full-time role in this project, which I think, Ulf, you're familiar with, and became the third employee of this emerging startup. And fast forward 12 years later, I have had a front row seat in building a company from scratch in a fast growth environment through VC funding and developing an industry-leading supply chain resiliency solution. So I have to say it's been a pretty fun journey so far.
You haven't really considered supply chain management at a start. And I think your first endeavors were around NGOs, I believe. But a lot of the work of NGOs has to do with supply chain management because it's a lot of allocating resources to far away and remote places. So did you already have some touch points there to at least have a basic understanding?
I have to say not really, because the work I did was in development consultancy, and we worked with building up capacity for businesses around certain areas. And I really did not know anything about supply chains, I have to be honest. And as I got more into it, I found it so fascinating. And I always say to my friends that no one really understands supply chain from the outside. And it's one of those things that just works. It's one of those things that just exists. And unless you're in it, you don't really understand how critical it is. I quite enjoyed that part as well, how hidden it is. And as I got into it, I found it fascinating. But no, in my course of work in development consultancy, I really had no touch points, and it was a complete plunge into the deep end of the pool.
Actually, very similar to my own journey. Also 2010, looking for a job. Found it, had the luxury of even selecting my department. And the reason I ended up in supply chain management, because I didn't want to go to the others. That's how it sometimes starts. But then the passion developed from there.
Yeah.
Anyway, you went through various roles now in supply chain management, right? And for me, you're the ultimate testament on how versatile a career can be before you really end up where you want to be, right? You did sales, you did communication, you did marketing, a lot of business development, and before you have seen it all, and then eventually ended up in product management and leading product management. So what are some of the key takeaways that really stuck with you from the last roles that then helped you improve as a professional overall that you still can take with you now in the product management world?
Yeah. One of the things that I want to highlight is that no matter what job you're doing, communication is key. Being able to communicate your ideas, your plans, your priorities, these are all common across different roles. And being able to break down ideas from big projects, big deliverables into smaller chunks is another area that I learned over the years in different roles. And that has helped me in my role in product management, because sometimes you start with something extremely abstract. How do you solve problem XYZ? And you don't have a clear solution. There are many paths that you can take, and really being able to understand how to break those things down in a smaller chunks, and then being able to communicate that, get feedback, get validation, are things that I've done throughout my roles, whether it's been in marketing, whether it's been in business development, whether talking to customers. And so that's been a constant theme throughout my career. And I have to say it really helps me a lot in my current role today, because not everything is defined, not everything is figured out, and we have to spend a lot of time figuring out what those solutions are, but at the same time making sure that we're communicating in the right way, understanding how those ideas need to be communicating, adapting those. And so communication and really being able to break down problems are key things I've always taken away from any role that I've been in.
Now we come to a very interesting part, because a lot of people start in an area and then they develop more and more into that over time. But you have actually seen product management, which now truly is your real passion. You've seen that first from the outside in, and then eventually saw the inside out. So it comes from providing customer feedback to getting customer feedback and doing something with it. So how has your perception of the role changed maybe over time?
Yeah. I worked in product management before moving into my role in customer experience and really managing the customer expectation side of things. And then I moved back to product management. And I think I think this is the perception when I talk to a lot of people, is that product management seems quite easy. You know what to build, and then you have to do these 5 steps, and then you just do it, right? I think I've just realized over the course of my product leadership role as well, is that it's not just about knowing what to build, but it's a lot about balance between new innovation and enhancements, balance in communicating the details of the features you're building with high-level market priority, industry priority, and why it needs building, balance across talking to a customer versus the leadership team versus other stakeholders and the details associated with that. I see product management also being quite focused on being a jack of all trades, so that you're balancing constantly across multiple priorities, doing different types of things. It could be talking to customers, it could be looking at even legal documents if necessary. And so balance is what I would say has driven me into this point, which I did not really consider initially. And then what I would like to say is as well that I think we can get caught in one way of doing product management. There's a one perfect way of doing product management, but that's not always the case. There's different ways of doing and building products, and it depends on what industry you're in. It depends on if you're in a B2B or a B2C environment. All of those things play a role in that. Yeah, I've been pretty hard on product management teams when I've been on the customer experience side. And I also now have a true appreciation for how much balancing act is required being on the product management side. So yeah, it's constant learning, it's constant evolution, and constant adapting as well.
Now we have talked a little bit about the process of getting to a product and how you develop a product. But now, what makes a product great from your perspective?
A product is truly great when it solves a real world problem. You can come up with a lot of innovation, but if it doesn't truly solve a problem and at the same time make users want to pay for the solution, it can't be a great product. At the same time, to be a great product, it shouldn't take you an exorbitant amount of time to learn how to use it. Think Dropbox. How many minutes does it take you to learn how to use a Dropbox solution? Extending that value from day one is what makes a product great. Sometimes we can't really achieve day one, but maybe as close as it can get to that is important. And then making products sticky. where your users want to continue to come back for more and more. That's, to me, the holy grail. Can we always achieve that? Maybe not, because there are also other restrictions and constraints that we have to work with. But I think if we could cover all of those things in a single product, that makes it a truly great product.
That's one of the problems a lot of AI companies are facing right now, who had good ideas to use AI, but then maybe, I don't know, some of them don't really solve the problem, to be quite frank.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts on that as well, because often companies and people consider AI to be the solution. It is not the solution, it is a means to an end. And AI is not that different. It is one way of solving a problem. And as soon as you figure out what problem needs solving, I think you can better leverage AI rather than using it as the holy grail itself to solve everything.
Look at my shiny new calculator. Yeah. In a German class right now. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, that's the idea.
That's
yeah,
right.
I get it. Okay. So let's move on to the next point before we ramble too much about AI, because obviously we know how to solve problems with AI, but also have seen how that conversation gets derailed now in the market. So what do you think are some of the things that an aspiring young product manager in supply chain or outside of supply chain should know before they start designing a product? And then maybe do also a deep dive on supply chain management specifically.
Sure. That's a tough question, because supply chain or no supply chain, I think you always need to realize that you can never know everything, right? If you have known everything, then you are at the end of your career potentially, and there's no more path for you to go to. With supply chain, I'll say that they're very complex, and you can, for example, know a lot about the sourcing part of a supply chain, but at the same time know nothing about how goods are transported or stored. And the best thing you can actually do is be humble and learn as much as you can from wherever you can. And just know that you don't know everything. And the best thing you can do is really talk to as many people as you can, read as much as you can, talk to as many customers as you can. And that will help you set the foundation for what you need to know for jobs to be done to develop a great product. And I think this advice is not limited to supply chains. No matter what industry you're going into, you always need to accept that you're not going to know everything. You're not going to be the expert. And that is also okay, as long as you keep an open mind and stay humble, that you are willing to learn, and willing to learn all these things is what will get you to be a good product.
You are obviously staying humble even now, where you have gathered so much experience and still always are open for feedback, which I really appreciate. How is it if you have maybe people that you see, because I know you also work in product management initiatives outside and talk to them. How is it if somebody thinks he's Mr. Know-it-all, how to approach somebody like that in order to get him to understand that maybe you should always be willing to learn new things and open for new ideas? Because I think that especially in product management could happen, right? I don't think we have that situation, but it could happen.
Yeah, I think no matter what, I'm a strong believer of coaching and feedback, and not just with my team members or people that are part of my team, but just overall and across everyone I work with, because I benefit from it when people give me feedback. And I benefit from people that are willing to coach me and are willing to give me pointers and guidance. And I try to do the same for others. Of course, if somebody is completely resistant to keeping an open mind and learning and adapting, that is the way it is. But I feel like as somebody who's been around the block for a bit, giving feedback and sharing my experiences and providing guidance is something that I actually enjoy as a product leader. And I think that's what we owe everyone around us.
And coming now to learning and self-education, you actually are the person that I know that takes opportunities like this the most, right? You continuously look for new ways to further educate yourself outside of work on things that have to do with work. If it's doing an entire MBA, getting a certification on risk and crisis management, or learning more around product management and leadership through various different books and seminars. So my first question, and maybe the most important one, how do you have time for this?
I don't know. I love to learn. I'm generally a curious person, and for me, learning helps me stay grounded, because I always recognize that I obviously don't know everything. And the more I know how much I don't know. And so that keeps me intrigued in the things I want to learn. But I think continuously learning helps me do my job in a better way, which is what I'm motivated to do. But it also helps me be a more well-rounded person, right? And I want to be the person who's interested in things, who's wants to do other things outside of work and have a balance. And I feel like that's just something I'm really keen to pursue and learn as much as I can with the limited time that we have in this planet and use that to a good use.
Obviously, not everybody does it. Would you say that because you really doing the MBA, and doing it in a very, I would call it, organized manner, would you say that approach is the best for everybody, or how are there other ways how you go about that sometimes might be not as structured?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you are and what you need from life. A structured MBA program where you have to be in a classroom for a fixed amount of time for 2 years or 1 year may not be for everybody. And I think sometimes we get caught up in formal education quite a bit. And that's not necessarily the only way you can learn. As I mentioned before, you can learn from people, you can learn from mentors, you can learn from books, you can learn from reading, you can even learn from YouTube videos. And so whatever makes you tick, whatever makes it work for you is what I would recommend anybody to pursue. If you prefer to watch a YouTube video while you're cooking, and because that's the only time you have between other commitments in life, go for it. As long as you find something that you love, an MBA or a structured program is not what is necessary.
And essentially this, what we're recording right now, is education in the end, right? Because you can learn different ways of going through the journey of supply chain management.
Absolutely.
So this is a video you should actually watch while cooking. There we go. I now want to delve into something that not everybody knows, which is before you started your professional career, you had a completely different thing going on for yourself, which is you have been a lead singer for a stadium-filling band in Bangladesh. And obviously you have great and amazing presentation skills. But what else have you learned through that journey that helps you in work today?
So that's a part of my past that not many people know much about. But I actually have to clarify that my musical experience goes even further back. So I grew up in a very musical family, and I was trained in Indian classical music from the age of 3, which was a very young time to start, but my parents were very passionate about it, so they wanted us to learn, me and my sister. And one of the first things I learned as a kid was discipline. Because of this training in Indian classical music, I had to go to music school during the weekend when all my friends were out having fun. And that was part of the discipline that I learned in building a craft and honing a craft. And even before music recitals, I couldn't eat ice cream or anything cold so that I didn't hurt my voice. And so that was part of the discipline. Even though I hated it at the time, I learned later that it was part of the discipline that I learned to exercise. But then when I got into the stage where I was part of a band, it was all about teamwork. There was no one person that could be the star and everybody could be in the background, because everybody had to work as a team. And that was something that I really learned very early on in being in a band. And you had to show up and you had to be part of a team. Even if you're standing as the first person singing, you still were part of a team. And if something went wrong, it went wrong for everybody. And then lastly, I'd say that what I learned is no matter how scared you're feeling, there's no way you can say, I can't. If you're standing in front of an audience of 20,000 people and there is just simply no time to be scared or second guess yourself, the show must go on. And that's very similar to working in a startup or in a scale up. There's no time to ruminate. You will make mistakes. You just simply have to do it, even if you fail. And so that's what I've taken away from being in a band and performing in front of a large audience, that you just got to do it and the show has to go on.
That was beautiful. Oh my God. Oh, okay. So now we're going to the next amazing part of your life, which is volunteering. So you volunteer for various projects. You actually have received a surprise award once from DHL Living Responsibility Fund back then in 2016 for your work on refugee women beyond borders. You want to first share maybe a little bit about that project?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of your audience may remember that around that time, there was a huge influx of refugees coming to Germany and to other parts of the world due to the war in Syria and other places. And the project was initially meant to support female refugees or women that were arriving in Bonn, which is where I lived at the time, to get a little bit more integrated into society in Germany, but also give them something to think about beyond their very difficult situation. If you were seeing how refugees were welcomed into Germany, it often was a lot of bureaucratic hurdles after they arrived. They would basically sit in their refugee camps, and there was not a whole lot to do as well. And so the initiative was essentially to engage women in certain activities, make them a little bit more comfortable in their new environment in Germany, and give them something to do essentially, and make some contacts, have a network, and take their mind off of their situation. So that was the initiative I started with a friend of mine at the time. And yeah, we ran the project for a couple of years to help refugees in Bonn at the time.
Very cool, especially because Germany could have done a better job with the integration part. It was more like trying to keep a transitionary phase for them and then see if anything develops. Yeah, I think
I think Germany did a lot more than many places, and so I am definitely going to acknowledge that. And it was a very challenging time, and Germany was not the country that said we're going to close our border. And there were some countries who did that. We're going to welcome people, and we're going to do as much as we can. But I think we weren't really prepared with the bureaucratic hurdles. It didn't have enough resources to be able to handle that. So it was a bit of a challenging situation. And
it was all spontaneous decision in the end,
yeah,
right?
And one of the reasons why I was really pulled to start this initiative is because I'll go back a little bit earlier. As a Bangladeshi, I've always had challenges getting visas in various countries because they require that you have a visa so that you will actually leave after you've traveled to that place. And so I was once complaining, in a way, to a colleague at the time, how I always have to go through this bureaucratic hurdle of applying for visas, which in the wider context of things is probably not a big deal, but nevertheless a bit of a nuisance. And this colleague of mine very flippantly said, "I'm so grateful I was born in Germany." And it was a very offhanded comment, but it stayed with me because it's a lottery where you are born. And if you're born in Syria, or if you're born in a war-torn country, or if you're born in Germany, that should not determine how the rest of your life goes. Everybody deserves equal opportunity and equal opportunity at life. And so when I saw the situation in 2016, it was one of those things that I just could not sit by and not do something about. And so I was very happy to find a few people that were willing to work on this, especially for women who often are traveling with children and may have left everything behind. And so it was a very important thing for me that we get involved with this activity during that time.
It's very hard to create equal opportunity. So it's great that you're at least trying, because it's just, it's the downside of capitalism, maybe, in a way. Okay, good. So going away from that heavy topic, let's talk about the passion behind your volunteering efforts, right? For this concrete case, but you did a lot of other programs as well. So would you say that, what is the driving factor behind all of this for you?
Yeah, I think part of it is the fact that I was raised in Bangladesh. I was born in Bangladesh. I was raised in Bangladesh. And I saw a lot of people that didn't have the same type of opportunities that I did. I came from a very privileged background. My parents were educated, but not everybody had that level of privilege or access to education. And as we were talking about, everyone deserves to have that chance at life, whether it's education, health, even just nutrition. And all of those things are just basic human rights. And as individuals, I think we can do a lot as individuals to contribute even a little bit towards making sure the world is an equitable place. And I think if we all come together and work together, I think we can make a difference. And so it just starts with taking that first step. And sometimes it can feel like, oh, I don't have time. I'm overwhelmed by the obligations I have in life. And I always encourage people to do as much as they are able to do. If the only thing that you can contribute is potentially through donations, then do that. If you can contribute through your time, contribute that. If you can provide advice or guidance to NGOs, you can contribute your time and skills in that way. So whatever works for you, do that. But we all have an obligation to make sure that we leave the world in a good state and do as much as we can.
Quick shout out to one of our previous episodes with Tim Nelson from Slave Free Alliance, who, especially in supply chain, tries to rid the supply chains of forced labor. You can donate their money, actually. Just quick FYI on the sites. Okay, so we come to my last question, which always is a hobby question. And for you, the obvious one was you read a lot of books, like a lot. What would be some of the books you would recommend somebody who is interested in learning more about supply chain management from a product perspective?
Yeah, you're right. I do read a lot. And one of the things that helps me meditate a little bit, I read almost 60 to 70 books a year. And I think this is quite a tough question because there isn't, to my knowledge, and if somebody knows differently, please reach out to me and let me know, because I'm always looking for good book recommendations. But I haven't found a supply chain focused product management book. But there are two books that I've read recently that helped me really shape the way I think about the products that we're building. One is Chip War, the fight for the world's most critical technology. It's about semiconductors, essentially, and how the semiconductor supply chain is set up, what are the geopolitical aspects of it that you need to keep in mind. And the other one, which is also a little bit related, is Cobalt Red, how the blood of the Congo powers our lives, which is essentially about cobalt and how that feeds into lithium-ion batteries, which is basically in everything these days, and how modern-day slavery is a key part of that, and what you can do, if anything, to understand how potentially you're contributing to that. Very heavy stuff, but at the same time, I felt that understanding how these supply chains are laid out helped me inform myself around how products can work and function and how we can support our customers, especially around things like supply chain due diligence, compliance, what is actually reasonable. I think we sometimes have very altruistic and very aspirational ideas, but sometimes it doesn't match reality. And so how can you bridge the gap between those two is an interesting area to think about and learn about. So I would definitely recommend these two books for anyone interested in supply chain management, but also thinking about how product and softwares that help supply chain can support some of these areas.
This is a podcast, essentially, where we have done it. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing, very interesting for me as well, because I found some new aspects I didn't know about and some thinking I've not heard in our day-to-day exchanges. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And it's always a fun exercise to have a conversation with you. So thanks for having me.
I'm not so sure, but yeah, maybe. Let's see. Good. And for everybody who watched the video or listened to the audio, thank you so much for being here. If you're cooking, fishing, or whatever you have done in the meantime, thank you so much. And with this, we want to say, have a nice day and bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
This was Supply Chain Pioneers. Thanks for watching, listening, or however you are enjoying this podcast. You can find Supply Chain Pioneers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all other major podcast players, as well as on YouTube at Ulf Talks Supply Chain. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time.